are you all? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Peyton, and today we're going to talk about more horror books and movies. Wanted to make this video for a while. This video is going to be, if you like this horror movie, read this horror book, or vice versa. If you like this book, watch this horror movie. I consume a lot of horror all year round. It's my favorite genre. I love being scared. I love the subgenres within horror. I love the storytelling. I love the metaphors within it. I love how much you can do with something so horrific. 10 recommendations, 10 books, 10 movies. This will be ongoing as I read and watch more horror. This is my opinion based on reading these books and watching these movies. If you personally don't find any of these scary or a good match, by all means, make your own list. I'm open to your suggestions, but you don't have to be mean about it. You don't have to be a dick about it. All these books I would categorize under horror, so if you have any sensitivities, please check trigger warnings. Please, please, please. There's some heavy stuff covered in these. But without further ado, whoo boy, we have some doozies on this list. So get a snack, get a coffee, and sit back and let's talk horror. We're starting off with a doozy this morning. The first recommendation I have, if you like the movie Hostel, I recommend the novella Blue Jay by Megan Stockton. So let me talk about Hostel. Hostel came out, I would say, in the 2000s, early 2000s, directed by Eli Roth. It is brutal. There's a reason it has quite the reputation that these movies do have. It's a lot of torture, it's a lot of horrible things happening to people unrelentingly for about a 90-minute period. This follows two American best friends, Josh and Pax. They're staying in hostels throughout Europe while they're backpacking, following college graduation, and they want to indulge in all these like hedonistic fantasies and just go all out. So in Paris, they meet this Icelandic man named Ollie who wants to join them, as he is in the same pursuit as they are, and he is even more open to these indulgences. They hear about this hostel in Slovakia that kind of just takes things to another level, they think sexually, but it can't be compared to anything else. But then they find out it is not what is advertised, it is not what they bargained for. All these fantasies quickly turn into an absolute nightmare. Ooh, I thought about showing like clips from like trailers in this, but I don't even know if I want to because I've seen it a couple times and it's just it still gets me. There's one scene in particular with an Achilles tendon where I'm just like, I want to shoot out of my skin through the roof into another stratosphere because it's just too much. I hate it. Yeah, they end up getting separated and they have to find a way to get out. It's a lot. It's a lot. That is Hostel if you have not seen it. The book recommendation, Blue Jay by Megan Stockton. I read it earlier this year. I was actually really impressed. That was my first Megan Stockton. So this is about three men who are like your average run-of-the-mill guys. One is like a stay-at-home dad, one's an EMT, another one is like a, for lack of a better term, like loser. And they all bond over their shared obsession with horror, extreme horror, and they kind of have this ongoing competition to who can come up with like the most repulsive or horrifying thing. Like they share texts and like crime scene photos and talk about like snuff films and like all that jazz. They're constantly trying to one up each other. And so one of the guys during one of their guys' nights, one of them comes across this invitation that he stole to this exclusive club which offers a very realistic, immersive torture experience. And they're like, okay, let's go. It's not that far away. Let's go. And they jump at the opportunity to go. Once they arrive at this club, they are separated, each with their own choice of immersion. They quickly realize it's not a simulation at all. And things take a very outlandish, very disgusting, very upsetting, violent turn. And there is a race to get out alive. Yeah, it's pretty brutal. Like, there's a reason I'm comparing it to Hostel, for sure. Not just, like, the borderline, like, having, like, the most intense experience ever for these edgelords. Yeah, it's a doozy. I think it's, like, only, like, maybe 100 pages, but it wastes no time. No time. Just go in there. I did enjoy her writing, and like the ending was like such a gut punch. Yeah, I do want to read more Megan Stockton, but that's my first recommendation. Next, I'm going to have a caveat with this first recommendation, so hold your horses. Misery, and This Is Where We Talk Things Out by Caitlin Marceau. Yes, you can definitely read the original text for what the movie Misery is based on. It's one of Stephen King's most well-known novels. It's actually one of the better adaptations of his work. I really enjoy it. Kathy Bates is so horrifying in that movie. Oh my god. It's such a great movie. The book is fantastic as well. So obviously you can do that. But before I talk about This Is Where We Talk Things Out, if you don't know anything about Misery, read the book first. I'm just gonna say that. But if you've already read it and haven't seen the movie, it's pretty spot on. Yeah, I put this other recommendation for a super short, freaky option as well. But Misery is about a best-selling author named Paul Sheldon. He's on his way home from one of his homes, I think it's in Colorado, after completing his latest book. And he gets stuck in a blizzard and crashes his car horribly, injures himself, and he's rescued by a former nurse named Annie Wilkes, who Paul finds out is his #1 fan. And she takes Paul back to her very remote house. Very, very remote house in the mountains. Doesn't tell anyone that he's there or she's taking care of him. And unfortunately for Paul, Annie's also a little crazy. When Annie discovers that Paul has written off his main heroine in his series, Annie decides to keep him there until he rewrites the story. And it's so claustrophobic. It's so, you're just so anxious and mad and angry, and you just feel everything Paul's feeling. Yeah. It's intense. It's a tense novel. It's a tense movie. Highly recommend absorbing the book and the movie. If you want a shorter, freaky option, I recommend This Is Where We Talk Things Out by Caitlin Marceau. It's about 90 pages, so very short, very quick read. This follows Miller, our main character, and her estranged mother, Sylvie, who have always had a terrible relationship. Miller was very close to her father, who passed away, and her mother has made it clear she doesn't like her lifestyle, that she's a lesbian and lives her life a certain way, and they've just never gotten along. They've always butted heads. A little bit after her father dies, Miller agrees to a girls' weekend with her mom to have one last stab at reconnecting. Miller's girlfriend is like, please don't go, please don't do this, I don't like this, she's crazy, I think this is just going to hurt you more, this is just going to be a big disappointment. Miller's like, I need to give her a try, I need to give her a shot. And she's very eager to try and make things work. Sylvie rents this mountainside cabin for this little girls' weekend to reconnect, and it starts snowing as soon as they get there, blizzard conditions. And Miller gets a little stressed that, oh my god, like, I don't think this is gonna work out. I think I need to go. But then things just start getting really weird. Sylvie starts acting more and more erratic. It's so tense. It's so upsetting. You are just so angry and you feel so much for Miller. It's claustrophobic. It's intense. It's very and the ending is like, holy crap. The ending, I almost cried because I was like, this is intense. This is so insane. Highly recommend both of these, Misery and This Is Where We Talk Things Out. And I'm very excited to talk about this next one because okay, the next recommendation I have, it's tied for my favorite horror movie along with John Carpenter's The Thing, and that is Rosemary's Baby. And the book recommendation I have to go along with that is Nestlings by Nat Cassidy, who took a lot of inspiration from that, and it shows. It shows. Like, Nat Cassidy is one of my new favorite authors. I absolutely loved the hell out of this book, obviously. It's just perfect. Rosemary's Baby, like I said, one of my favorite movies ever. It's about a very young homemaker, Rosemary Woodhouse, who lives in New York with her kind of struggling actor husband, Guy. And they decide to move into the Branford, which is this very old Gothic apartment complex in New York that's very sought after. And the apartment is going for a steal, and they can't believe their luck. It is big, it is spacious, it has character, it's everything they've wanted, and they want to start a family. They also start hearing very unsettling stories about the building's history and the previous tenants. They also befriend their neighbors, Roman and Minnie Cassavat, who are just a little too eager to be their friend, they're just a little kooky. And then, oh, hi Rosie. And then Rosemary soon finds out she is pregnant. And it's so exciting for them. That's what they've wanted. Things are finally starting to look up. Guy is getting cast in more roles on Broadway and getting more commercial work. Things are going great. However, things start to take a very sinister, conspiratorial turn as Rosemary starts getting very weirded out by little instances with her neighbors, her doctor with Guy. Like, things are not clicking. And then she starts to feel like she isn't safe, her baby isn't safe. There's conspiracy about cults, and she doesn't know who to trust. Is she just overreacting as a new mother to be? Is she just very scared of being a mother? Or are there more darker, sinister aspects at play? And who can you trust if you can't trust your husband or your doctor or your neighbors? It's so good. Oh, it's so good. Oh my god. Nestlings. Nestlings made me cry, for one thing. It's very well done. It's very freaky. This follows Anna and Reed, who are brand new parents, trying to start over after a very tragic event with their baby's birth. They move into this very historic, rent-controlled New York apartment complex. It seems too good to be true. And what is starting as a very promising new chapter in their lives to just start over and move on, it quickly turns into an absolute horror-filled nightmare as they start to encounter very strange neighbors, bumps in the night. There's an overwhelming sense that something is terribly, terribly wrong. And there's so much packed into this book. Like, so much horror, so much commentary on motherhood, so much commentary on postpartum depression. It's so good. It's so, so good. Like, both of these, Rosemary's Baby and Nestlings, like, I think are executed so well. Yeah. So that is Nestlings and Rosemary's Baby. This one is a newer recommendation, and I mean that, but it's a newer movie. It's one of the newer movies on this list. So this comparison is Barbarian, which came out a couple years ago, and Night Shoot by David Sodergren. I loved Barbarian. It's so wild. Barbarian follows a young woman who is in town for a job interview, and when she gets to the Airbnb she booked, she finds out there's someone already staying there. It's kind of weird dude. He's very friendly, but it's also like, yeah, I'm alone, I'm a woman, it's at night, it's dark, it's raining, where the hell else am I gonna go? So against her better judgment, she decides to stay anyway. She soon discovers there's stuff in the house that is way worse than she ever could have imagined. It's wild. It's so fun. Fun? I think it's fun. It was so unpredictable. I didn't know what was gonna happen at each turn, and they throw so much at you, but it all works really well together. Really enjoyed Barbarian. Freaky, it's scary, it's a movie. And then I want to talk about Night Shoot by David Sodergren. David Sodergren's one of my new favorite horror authors. I think his books are just so over the top, but in a good way, and gore-filled, horror-filled, like kind of funny, but there's so much great horror in it that I can't I read them so fast. They're just so great. This follows a group of very desperate student filmmakers who have had a horrible shoot during the day for their senior thesis. Their main actress quit. They're out of time filming at this giant manor, which they could only be at until 8 p.m. at night, then they had to leave. They decide to sneak back in for a night shoot to finish out their film. And boy, did they regret doing that, because they soon discover, like in Barbarian, there are way more horrifying things within this house than they ever could have imagined. Again, couldn't predict where the hell this was going. I was like, my jaw dropped at a couple places because I was like, what? Ooh, it's horrifying. Again, it's kind of funny. I even think Barbarian is funny. Like, there's some parts in Barbarian that were just so ridiculous that it was hilarious. And I would say the same thing about Night Shoot. So that is that recommendation. Okay, this one's a little broader, but when you see the book recommendation, I think it'll make sense. So if you like any slasher from the 80s, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Halloween, even a newer recommendation would be In a Violent Nature that came out earlier this year, I would recommend My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. I read this earlier this year. Really, really enjoyed it. So I'm not going to talk about any of those specifically, but mainly all the ingredients of a slasher, small town, final girl, insane kills, maybe a larger conspiracy at play, a red herring or two, all that jazz. I think Stephen Graham Jones hits the nail on the head multiple times in this book, because you can obviously tell he is a massive horror fan, and his main character, Jade Daniels, is also a massive horror fan. This book follows Jade, who in this smaller town in Idaho is known as the local horror nerd. Kind of weird girl, troubled. She is obsessed with horror. She has this whole list that ticks these boxes about what you need to do to survive a horror, what you need in a horror, and she soon discovers that there's a slasher at play in Proof Rock. All of her knowledge will finally come to use if people believe her, and she needs to get a final girl ready for all that is about to unfold. I loved this. I would say it was my first Stephen Graham Jones. The pacing is a little odd in some places, but overall the story is so good and you love Jade so much. And if you love horror, talking about horror, absorbing horror, like having at-length conversations about horror, and just vibing with horror nerds, it's perfect. I loved this so much. I cannot wait to finish this series, but that's my recommendation for any type of slasher, is to read My Heart is a Chainsaw. Alright, the next bucket of recommendations I have. If you like the movie The Witch, directed by Robert Edgers, I recommend GREYDOG by Elliot Gish. This was a debut from this author that came out earlier this year. Loved it! It blew my socks off. I was so surprised. This is so good. Anyway, The Witch. The Witch is absolutely amazing. Like, hands down, if you have not seen it, I think it's one of A24's within their canon, like, top 3 for me. Like, it's so good. It's so authentic and just so unnerving, and just like everything. The actors are absolutely amazing in it. The kids actors are so great. The atmosphere, the folklore, it's so good. Before I go on any more tangents about how good it is, sorry. The Witch is set in New England in 1630. Follows a family who are outcast from their town and decide to move out to the forest and live off the land and live their version of a very Christian lifestyle with their 5 children. One day, their newborn son goes missing, vanishes, their crops start to fail, they have a lot of trouble getting food, and their animals start acting weird. Their oldest daughter, Thomason, is very suspicious that something is in the woods, something is watching them, something, maybe the devil. The family is convinced they are being cursed for leaving. They are out on their own. They are so isolated. They have no one around to help. One horrible thing after another starts to happen. It's so well layered and it's so well done. The pacing's impeccable. It's so good. I love The Witch. It's so great. So tense. There's like this, you know, something very evil is at play and you cannot get out from under it throughout the whole film. GREYDOG. GREYDOG is set a couple hundred years later in 1901, following Ada Bird, who, actually I think she's my age. She's considered a spinster in 1901, a schoolmarm and amateur naturalist. Following her disastrous previous employment, she was let go and shamed. Her father finds her this post in the middle of nowhere in the woods where really no one wants to be. She's very grateful for the chance to reestablish herself after all the scandal that happened, but you're not sure of just exactly what happened yet. She develops friendships with her neighbors, explores the woods with her students, examining animal bones and moss and flowers, bugs, and it's set in the fall too, which is really, I read this in April, but it's a really good fall read. And she starts to like feel some levity and sees a future for herself. Oh, it's all told in diary format too, so it's like you just want to keep reading and find out what all this weird stuff that starts happening. So these signs start happening, like she finds like a mutilated rabbit and these swarm of bugs out of nowhere that are out of season. She starts hearing something calling her into the woods, and she's not sure if she's going crazy or something more sinister as it is at play, and she starts to be confused about what is real, what isn't real. She's not sure what is all behind all these offerings, she thinks, and she soon finds out about this folklore called GREYDOG. Also discovering what happened to the last schoolmarm. What's the history with this town? And the more and more she uncovers, the more horrifying it all becomes for her. It's great. I loved it. Just female rage at its finest. I love it. It's so good. Highly, highly recommend. Debut. I cannot wait to see what Elliot Gish does next. The next one is sci-fi horror. So if you like the movie Alien, I would recommend the novella The Scourge Between Stars, which I just read. Really, really enjoyed. Alien, if you have not seen it, if you've not seen it, why? It's amazing. In the not so distant future, there is a commercial spaceship called Nostromo. Aboard the Nostromo, there's this crew who are on their way home, but then the crew picks up a distress signal from a distant moon. They decide to follow it and see what's going on. The crew investigates, and after a rough landing, a few of the crew members start to explore the area. One of them injured, then he's fine. He's acting fine. He's walking around, eating food. And then they discover he is a carrier of something that is now loose aboard the ship and is hunting them and killing them off. And the main character, Ellen Ripley, is also trying to hunt this thing down and stop it. It's great. It's great. I love everything about it. Where's my Xenomorph? Yeah, can you tell I'm like a really big fan of this franchise? My little toy. My little Xenomorph toy. Sorry, I got distracted. The Scourge Between Stars by Ness Brown is about 160 pages. This follows acting captain of the spaceship Calypso, and she's responsible for keeping the last little bit of humanity alive. This ship is on the way back to Earth after a failed attempt to recolonize a distant planet, and they're low on food, they're low on fuel, they're very low on morale. Fights are breaking out. It's just not good. Her dad is the captain, but he is indisposed, and you're not really sure what's going on with him. And everything is, like, the crew, everything is at a breaking point. They soon find out, after again discovering a distress signal, that something has gotten aboard the ship. They don't know what it is. They don't know what it wants, but it's picking off crew members one by one, and there is a race against time to hunt it down. It's really good. The twist I was not expecting. It's a tense, tight 160 page read. I really love it. It did very much remind me of Alien. Also, I guess Event Horizon. That's another Event Horizon. I'm not going to tell. It's good. It's good sci-fi horror. So if you like sci-fi horror and have not read this, highly recommend. It's also their debut. Very, very good. Ooh, yeah. I forgot I put this one on the list because I don't have the physical copy to hold up. But if you like newer horror movie, When Evil Lurks, I think it's from Argentina, I would recommend the book Boys in the Valley by Philip Fracassi. When Evil Lurks is wild. Set in this very remote village, two brothers who own a farm hear rumblings about this man who's very ill, and they go over to help. They find he is very much demon infested and infected, and he is about to literally give birth to evil. And it starts to spread like a sickness throughout this town. The brothers are then forced to find a way how to stop it before it spreads even farther than their village and escape it, and it's so tense. The kills are insane. I never knew where this was gonna go. It's really good. Yeah, it's good. It's just, yeah, I remember like watching it. It's just, Boys in the Valley by Philip Fracassi. Set in the winter in this very rural, remote valley in Pennsylvania. St. Vincent's Orphanage for Boys. Under the watchful eye and guidance of a few different priests, there's 40 boys from, I think the youngest is like 5 up to 17. The main character, I think he's about to turn 18. Peter, who has a very upsetting backstory, but has really come into his own at this orphanage and is trained to be a priest. Then one very late and stormy night, the sheriff and a group of other men bring in this convict who they are convinced is possessed to give him last rites. He has all these occult symbols carved into them. He's wild, acting very feral. When he dies, the evil is released into the air and travels like a sickness throughout this orphanage. It's so, once I finished, I was like, man, that was pretty good. And then I sat with the book longer and the story, and it's so horrifying. The boys, they start acting differently. They start taking sides. I would say it's like Lord of the Flies, but like demonic. There's a blizzard. They can't really go anywhere. And so Peter's trying to stop this, figure out how to stop it, get out alive, and stop whatever it is from getting outside of the orphanage. It's really, really good. Okay, so David Sodergren's gonna show up again on this list. He's just too good. And this was his new release that came out this year. If you like the movie The Ring, one of my favorites, I would recommend David Sodergren's Rotten Tommy. Oh boy, if you have not seen The Ring, Luke had never seen The Ring. I made him watch it. It's so good. It still holds up. It's scary. The Ring is so scary. Like, I don't care what anyone says. It holds up so well. The same scares that scared me years ago, it still like makes me like, ugh, every time. The Ring follows a investigative journalist named Rachel Keller who is investigating these very weird deaths. One of them being her niece, who this urban legend that there's this videotape out there that if you watch it and watch its contents, you will die in 7 days. And Rachel watches it and these weird things start happening. She gets a phone call. 7 days. Her son watches it. She finds out her son watched it, so there's a race against time to figure out the history behind this tape, why it's killing, and how to stop it if she can to save her and mainly her son's life. It's so good. It's so good. Like, Naomi Watts, I wish she'd done more horror because she is such a good scream queen. Literally, her scream in it is so horrifying. It's like genuine terror. It's so good. Man, the imagery, like the pacing, like the color palette, everything. It's set in Seattle and like everything's like gray, blue, rainy, cold, and it's so good. Rotten Tommy by David Sodergren. So this follows a woman named Becky. This is 40 years since her mom unexplainably disappeared. And she's never really got over it. She's never really stopped searching, even when everyone else stopped searching. The police, her father, her husband is even at his wit's end with hearing about it. Everyone just wants her to move on. Becky and her husband are having a contractor over and work done on their house. They knock down this wall, and behind this wall is a box. It has some like knickknacks, but there's also a few videotapes in there. Becky decides to start watching the tape. She's very confused. What she's seeing doesn't really make any sense. It's really horrifying. She doesn't know if it's real or not. But Becky soon finds out that she has summoned a long-forgotten nightmare called Rotten Tommy, who just the act of watching these tapes summons him. Anyone who watches these tapes summons them to kill. And Becky, like Rachel, is at a race against time to figure out the history behind these tapes and how to stop it if she can. I really enjoyed Rotten Tommy. I like the lore behind Rotten Tommy. It was so good. The kills are like all David Sodergren books. The kills are absolutely fantastic. There's one in particular that I was like, that was sick. That was so good. Like The Ring. Highly recommend Rotten Tommy, and vice versa. Alright, and the last one I have to recommend is one of my favorite indie horrors, and a book, I think I read this book last year, and upon, I finished it and I was like still thinking about it, and it really got under my skin. It really freaked me out. So if you like the movie The Void, if you haven't seen it, it's very good. Indie horror. I would recommend This Thing Between Us by Gus Moreno. Oh, alright, let me talk about The Void first, because I don't see this talked about a lot or recommended a lot. It's actually really good. It's really effective. This is set in a very small town. It follows a sheriff deputy who discovers, while he's on patrol driving one night, he discovers this blood-soaked, disoriented man on the side of the road. Drives to this hospital where it's literally a skeleton crew. There's like 2 people on call. One of them is an intern, and as soon as they start treating this person, there's this domino effect of horrible things happening. Very violent, horrible things happening at the hospital. And they soon discover, while looking outside, that the hospital has become surrounded with cloaked-like figures just watching. And they realize they cannot leave. They cannot go anywhere. And they are in deep trouble. While they're trying to protect themselves, they start getting drawn back deeper and deeper into the hospital. And what they discover is really upsetting, really shocking, and my jaw was on the floor. I was like, what? Holy crap. I had about the same reaction with This Thing Between Us. This was so unique and so upsetting in multiple different ways and so horrifying. This is about a young married couple, Vera and Thiago, who they buy this Alexa-like device called an Itza. They thought it'd be a little fun, like just a way to like maybe make their lives a little bit easier. And then strange things start to happen in their home. They get packages delivered that they definitely didn't order, and they hear very eerie music at odd hours, and then it starts projecting light all over the place, very odd scratching noises that they have no idea where it's coming from. Yeah, it's all haha funny, and then Vera is killed. And that's not a spoiler, it's in the back of the book. Thiago is like thrust into this insurmountable grief, and it's so sad to read about. But things start getting worse within his house. Things start getting crazier, and Vera's death is national news, and as a way to escape it, Thiago goes out to rent this cabin in Colorado to get away from it all, and he just wants to deal with his grief and heal. But whatever was in the condo has followed him out to Colorado. It's gotten worse, and it does not want to let him go. Whatever is following him is feeding even more on his grief, and it's determined to find a way into his world. Oh, it's so, man, I want to reread this very soon, actually. I would say it's a pretty quick read because you want to know what is happening and why it's happening. But that is my list. Have you read any of the books that I mentioned? Have you watched any of the movies I've mentioned? I would love to know down below. If you have like counter recommendations, I would also love to know. And yeah, I hope I gave you some good things to read or watch. Yeah, like I said, this is going to be, I'll probably make more of this type of video as I read and watch more horror, see these little instances of similarities. As always, thank you so much for clicking. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe down below. It really helps me out. I really appreciate the support, and I'll have a new video for you soon. Bye!